Let's dig into the top 3 reasons why it might feel impossible for you to stop binge eating. If you're feeling like binge eating is controlling your life, stick around. We're going to talk about the top 3 reasons why, as well as some things that you can do instead. My name is Sheena, and I'm a registered dietitian specializing in the care of persons with eating disorders. New episodes every Wednesday, so if that's something that you're interested in, definitely click that subscribe button. The number one reason why you are just feeling out of control with binge eating is that you are trying to restrict your weight out of a binge. What tends to happen is something we call the binge restrict cycle. And what this is we are oftentimes consuming a very large quantity of food, probably larger than many individuals might consume in one setting, or we're just feeling extreme guilt, shame, and anxiety around the food that we're eating, regardless of the quantity. Often feeling urgent and out of control with the food, like we just can't stop eating. These are all definitions of what it means to binge eat. And when we feel this way, it seems like the logical response is to eat less at the next meal. So we may forego the meal altogether, or we may have strict rules around the next meal or snack or the next day when it comes to what we're going to put into our body. So, for example, we may forego having breakfast, or we may limit the quantity of breakfast and lunch, etc. This binge restrict cycle, while it seems logical because ourselves that we've had more calories than we need in one setting, and therefore it makes sense to offset this the next day, actually increases the likelihood of us experiencing binge eating in the future. Oftentimes, the more we do this binge restrict cycle, the more intense and more frequent that binge eating gets. This can be incredibly troublesome when somebody is recovering from an eating disorder and trying to stop that binge eating, because when they do restrict their food the next day, they often feel like that is the antidote for engaging in that binge eating. In fact, it is the cause of that binge eating. And that is why this situation can feel so impossible. It can feel like if we are not foregoing that next meal or not engaging in some type of rule and restriction around food, that we will simply never stop consuming food. We feel like we can't trust ourselves around the food, and therefore we set up strict limitations and parameters around that food choice. Instead, really challenge yourself to have 3 meals and 3 snacks per day. Set a timer if you must. Every 2 to 3 hours, put something into your body, even if it feels like the last thing that you want to do. Slowly over time, you will start to notice the frequency and intensity of those binge eating behaviors begin to decrease. The second reason why it may feel impossible to get rid of binge eating is that you are obsessed with weighing yourself on a scale. This weighing behavior is actually the number one predictor of future food restriction or engaging in compensatory behaviors in an eating disorder, such as compulsive exercise or trying to get rid of the food in your body through something like laxatives or purging behavior. While we might think that weighing on the scale is harmless, it often dictates the way that we're feeling mentally about ourselves. If we don't see a number that we like on the scale, or honestly, sometimes even if we do, we might tell ourselves that we're undisciplined, unworthy, that we have to stop the numbers on the scale from changing, and that we are directly responsible for those numbers changing on the scale. When we are obsessed with the scale and when we are weighing frequently or even infrequently, honestly, and we have binge eating behavior on board, it is going to actually exacerbate that binge eating behavior. We may have an urge to do some of these compensatory behaviors with food or restrict food altogether. And any type of food restriction, or honestly, even thoughts about food restriction, which often come up when we are weighing ourselves on the scale, especially if we're doing it very frequently, are going to lead to more binge eating. I often hear patients say, I just want to weigh myself on the scale to make sure I'm quote unquote okay. And this is honestly one of the worst things that you can do, especially if you are recovering from binge eating. Because as we are recovering from binge eating, we are learning to trust our body again and heal that relationship with food, which means we may eat more sometimes and less sometimes, and this may result in a change on the scale. And therefore, if we are not allowing those changes to naturally occur, it is very unlikely that you are ever going to discontinue that binge eating behavior. The third reason why it may feel impossible to quit binge eating is you are not labeling it correctly. is it even a binge? That's the most important thing to ask yourself. When we're trying to heal from some type of disordered eating, it is really important to label our behaviors appropriately. So there is a very big difference between binge eating, where we're feeling out of control with food and we cannot stop, versus something like emotional eating, where that emotional eating is actually a very natural biological response to some of the stresses that might occur in our daily behaviors. The emotional eating might come as a result of a loss of a job or a challenge in a relationship or just feeling really excited. And that's completely normal. It is not something that we should feel guilt or shame around, and it is a part of a healthy relationship with food. However, if we are not trusting ourselves because we are frequently engaging in binge eating behavior, we may mislabel something like emotional eating as binge eating. The same thing goes with feeling extremely hungry. And this is especially true if we do not have regular meals and snacks and we're just going for food and we're feeling extremely hungry, but we're stopping when we're full. If we're able to easily stop when we're full and we're not feeling the urge to, say, finish the whole bag of chips, and we're not pushing past that level of hunger to the point where it's painful and uncomfortable on purpose because of that lack of control, then we are actually, in fact, not binge eating. We are probably just extremely hungry because our meal and snack patterns are out of whack. So, very, very important to label that correctly if we do want to ultimately heal from that binge eating behavior. The best thing that you can do ultimately to stop some of this binge eating behavior, if you do realize that you have this on board, is first and foremost to get a qualified healthcare team. This usually consists of a doctor, a therapist, and a dietitian specialized in eating disorders. By the way, I do see patients one to one, so if you're interested in working with me, definitely check out the link below to schedule. I do take insurance, and what a lot of folks don't know is that if you are paying for an insurance plan, you are in fact paying for a dietitian whether you use one or not. So definitely a great support person to have on your team if you are struggling with binge eating. Next thing that you want to do, and something that the dietitian is going to be a key resource to help you with, is set up a regular routine with meals and snacks: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a couple of snacks. And each of these meals should consist of a protein, a carbohydrate, and some fruits and vegetables. We also want to add things like fats to our meals so that we are getting in enough nutrition. This is going to be your number one tool to decreasing the frequency and intensity of those binge eating behaviors over time. I hope that this information was helpful for you. If so, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with a friend.